Senator Steinberg on this issue.
Thank you very much. I know that a number of members are speaking in memory of Charles MANAT. There are some of his colleagues here, and therefore I'd like to request unanimous consent to suspend Senate Rule 55 to allow a lobbyist, a colleague of late Mr. MANAT, to be on the floor here without objection.
Without objection.
And then maybe I'll take my quick point of privilege here just to say my couple of words before you call on others. I want to welcome Tom McMorrow, who's a senior partner from the MANAT firm out here out of Sacramento. Welcome to you, and we're sorry for your loss, the loss of the great Charles MANAT. Anyone and everyone, and Senator De Leon and Senator Wright and Senator Padilla, others will sure recount his professional accomplishments. I'd just like to say that I had heard of Mr. MANAT. He was sort of a legend, but both in terms of the MANAT law firm. I think I actually interviewed at the firm after when I was in my third year of law school. I don't think they hired me, but that's another story. I always wanted to meet Mr. MANAT, and then 2 years ago, after I became pro tem, I was back in Washington, D.C., and he asked me if I would have dinner, and we went to one of the old Washington supper clubs and had dinner together. And I'll always remember it. A man of just great generosity, generous spirit, who really loved not only the Democratic Party, but loved the country, and was always interested in the next generation and making things better and improving the country. And he was a real patriot. And I'm just so glad I got the opportunity one time to have dinner, and I won't forget it in his memory. Thank you very much.
Senator De Leon, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, as well as colleagues. I rise to adjourn in the memory of Ambassador Charles T. MANAT, founder and co-chairman of the venerable Los Angeles law firm MANAT, Phelps & Phillips, who passed away July 22nd, just last month, at the age of 75. Over a storied 50-year career, Mr. MANAT mastered the business of politics and the politics of business. He was known throughout the legal, business, and political and civic circles as a visionary leader. In addition to co-founding the prominent national law firm that bears his name, Mr. MANAT served as the chairman of the Democratic National Committee from 1981 to 1985 and served as U.S. ambassador to the Dominican Republic from 1999 to 2001, as well as on numerous corporate as well as education civic boards. He served as co-chairman of Bill Clinton's presidential campaign in 1992. As DNC chair, Mr. MANAT was known for helping usher in the modern era in Democratic campaigns and for the bipartisan approach. As ambassador, he advocated for the DR-CAFTA trade agreement between the United States and the Caribbean and Central American countries and achieved progress on several bilateral issues. Dominican President Hipólito Mejia awarded him the Medal of Duarte Sanchez y Melilla, the country's highest diplomatic honor. While Mr. MANAT was widely respected and admired on a professional level, his closest allies, friends, as well as colleagues and clients and family simply knew him as Chuck. Chuck was a man of good humor, honesty, and honor, and above reproach when it came to business, legal, and political accomplishments. Mr. MANAT was a loving husband, father of three, and a father of three, and a grandfather of three. He was born in Chicago back in June 9th, 1936, and he was obviously drawn to politics at a very young age. He was elected the chair of the California Democratic Party back in 1969 and served as the finance chair of the DNC during the Carter administration. Lastly, I want to highlight that in February 1981, when he was elected chairman of the Democratic National Committee, he made some of his biggest marks on politics nationwide. He oversaw the rebuilding of the party structure, both literally as well as figuratively, after a few years of decline. He headed the construction movement for the DNC, the headquarters. If you go back to Washington, D.C., the headquarters adjacent to Capitol Hill, that is Chuck MANAT right there. Yeah, he is survived by his 3 children, Michelle MANAT, his son who lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Father Timothy MANAT, as well as his youngest son, Daniel. Our prayers go to him, his family, and the larger political family throughout the nation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator De Leon. And Senator De Leon, the desk asked if you could bring the name forward to be sure that Ambassador Manat's passing is properly memorialized.
Thank you.
Members, before we go to others, are there any others who wish to speak with reference to the passing of Ambassador Manat? Senator Wright.
I think I would concur with everything that Senator De Leon said. I don't know if it's fortunate enough or old enough or both to have been a friend of Chuck Manat's. And what a lot of people may not know about Chuck is that Chuck's political involvement goes back with a firm that he helped found that was called Wyman Boutzer. And Eugene Wyman was a political figure in California for some time. People who were involved in LA politics will remember that Eugene Wyman's wife was Rosalind Wyman, who was one of the early women members of the Los Angeles City Council, who was responsible for bringing the Dodgers from Brooklyn. And I know Mr. Lowenthal is very concerned about that, but we took the Dodgers from Brooklyn and brought them to Los Angeles with Rosalind Wyman. But one of the other things that Mr. Manat was involved in was banking law. And the first two African-American banks in the state of California were actually chartered by Chuck Manat, because in addition to all of the other works that he was involved in, he was also involved in a kind of multicultural economic effort. Not only did his firm reflect that kind of diversity, but his business practice reflected that. And as party chair and as state party chair, Chuck Manat always sought to make an inclusive big tent effort. So I had the great pleasure of knowing him and working with him. There are a number of people very quietly that Chuck Manat actually financed their law school careers. If you worked hard at the Democratic Party, Chuck Manat would actually finance higher education for people. His list of charities and accomplishments is far too numerous to mention. But I think as Kevin, my colleague, De Leon said, Senator, he was just a great guy for both the Democratic Party, the state of California, and the United States of America.
Thank you, Senator Wright. Senator Padilla, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. President, on this tribute as well.
Please proceed.
And I'll try not to be too repetitive. I know both Senator Wright and Senator De Leon were pretty comprehensive in covering the life and legacy of the man I got to know as Chuck Manat, having first been introduced by a very, very good mutual friend, no stranger to those of us in the Los Angeles delegation, Maureen Kendall, who connected us both while we were in Los Angeles, as well as on a few trips to Washington, D.C., and certainly by phone. Always very pleasant and entertaining conversations about policy, as well as politics, from a local, state, national, and international level. I think a couple of things that do bear pointing out, lest our Republican colleagues think we're going on and on about just a Democratic leader. As Senator Steinberg said, he cared about this country so much so that he got involved in politics, and it just so happened to be pursuing democratic ideals and values. But what can be more American than someone who was raised on a farm in Iowa as we enter the presidential election cycle? Raised on a farm in Iowa, met his wife when they were in the first grade, and didn't start dating until high school. As a youngster, not only doing well academically, but his involvement with the Future Farmers of America and the Boy Scout. I think the life and legacy of Charles Manat is the equivalent of motherhood in apple pie, as you hear the story. He went on to serve in the military with the Army JAG Corps. His involvement in politics started with involvement with the Young Democrats, leading their national activity around both the passage of the Civil Rights Act as well as the foundation of the Peace Corps. Both of those accomplishments ringing bells in the same year as we have pay tribute to Sergeant Shriver, to Secretary Christopher as well. In addition to his involvement in democratic politics, I think it bears recognizing that he served as a member of the George Washington University Board of Trustees for nearly 2 decades, and together with his wife Kathleen, founded the MANAT Democracy Fellowship at the International Foundation of Election Systems, consistent with his service as an ambassador to the Dominican Republic. And many, many other accolades. All I can say, again, in paying tribute to a hero and a leader from folks in the business circles, the political circles, the governmental circles, the civic circles around the country, is that I was proud to have gotten to know him a little bit, proud to have sought his counsel, and proud to have benefited from his support. I joined the entire Senate in paying tribute to Charles MANAT.
Thank you, Senator Padilla. Are there any other members who wish to speak in connection with this in memoriam? Senator Vargas, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I also met Chuck MANAT in 1995 in Washington, D.C., went to speak to him on an issue of the city of San Diego. And very interestingly, we spoke for hours because his son, Timothy, had converted to Catholicism and had entered the Jesuit order. And so he was quite curious about the Jesuits, and since I had spent 5 years in the Jesuits, he wanted to know all about them. So we spoke for hours, and I know that he missed a couple of his meetings because they were coming in to say, you have another meeting, and he goes, well, wait a minute, I have a little more to talk to this young man about. So we actually spent that night also at dinner, and I got to know him fairly well. Whenever I'd go to D.C., I'd stop by and say hello. And so I know that his son now, I believe, is the president of Cristo Rey Jesuit High School in Minneapolis. He is a Jesuit, and I know that the Jesuit family also prays for him. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Vargas. Members, are there any other members of the Senate who wish to speak on this matter? If not, then Senator Steinberg and members, we will say once again, we send our sympathies to friends and family of Ambassador MANAT, as well as our thanks for a lifetime of public service. And Senator De Leon, once again, we would ask that you be sure to bring the name forward so that Ambassador MANAT's passing can be properly memorialized.